Let's go into what a lot of conservatives don't seem to understand about how the economy works when it comes to a pandemic. Now, this is an article that has been highly circulated on social media, and I figured we'd go into it. Also, Archangel the Cub, that is 100% true. Eyeliner is almost always hot. Um, the I the trick is I don't actually know how to apply eyeliner in a good way, so I just like run it along the inside of my eyelid, and it works. Um, it is not great, but you know what? It works. But anyway, we are gonna go over forget shutdowns. It's demand shock that's killing our economy. Now you might remember our late chat buddy. You might remember our late chat buddy, Taylor Swift, who repeatedly talked about how Joe Biden was going to destroy the economy with shutdowns or whatever, like that shutdowns. And I get this in like my comments on YouTube as well. Shutdowns are going to kill the economy. They're going to lead to an unprecedented famine across Africa, yada, yada, yada. Uh, what a lot of conservatives don't understand when they complain about shutdowns is that there's more going on during a pandemic than just like the government response. There is also the like sociological response, like the social response that we have to a pandemic that further impacts the economy. So this article is basically about that. So when it talks about demand shock, uh, basically here's what happens in a. Aw, thank you, youth. But here's what happens. The economy basically goes like this. Um, in the United States, anyway, we are a service economy, and we are uh, an economy based on consumption. However, the issue is in the United States, especially when when there's like a pandemic like this, people stop going out to get services and stop consuming, which is a huge problem in the US economy. And they stop going out to consume and use services specifically because there is a chance that they could catch a deadly illness and die. It's not a really complicated psychological thing. It is basic preservation instincts. You learn a piece of information and you learn, oh, if I go out, there is and interact with people, there is a 2% chance that I might die. Do I really want to take that chance if I go out and like there's a lot of COVID-19 around and I get sick? Do I really want to take a 2% chance that I'm going to die doing that? You know? Or in the U.S. case, a 2.7% chance. If you get it, there's a one in a more than 1 in 50 chance that you're gonna die. So like, yeah, a lot of people have stopped going out, which means that in our economy, the like you guys know about supply and demand. We are currently suffering from demand shock, in which you can have your businesses open. That's true. However, people now are just not going to those businesses to consume things, to buy food, to procure services, because they're afraid of getting sick and dying, or getting a long-term illness or complication from this. Like, it's not. Oh, okay. You've basically how it works is you have, and this is a relatively simple way of looking at it. You have supply, you have demand. They're given like, for example, you have a certain supply of ice cream cones. If you're in an ice cream cone truck, like you're the ice cream man. You got well, I wish you the best of luck, Sauron the Deceiver. I hope that you can successfully deceive that cat, and make it into a true friend. Okay. Um, However, let's say you have an ice cream truck. You have enough ice cream in the truck to supply like 50 cones, right? For the sake of argument. Um, if there are 50 people who want your ice cream cones, you know that like you can sell all of your cones for $1. Like just for the sake of argument. If you, however, if there are 100 people who want those ice cream cones, that means that you can charge more because you have a limited supply, and there are more people out there who want your ice cream cones than are willing to, like might be willing to buy them. So if you only have the 50 ice cream cones, there are 100 people out there. Maybe you charge $2, and then you can sell all of your ice cream cones for $2, which is double the amount of money you would otherwise make for the $1. And basically that's kind of in a really small, simplified nutshell. That's how supply and demand works. I'm not an economist, but the the issue is that in a demand shock, what happens is you have the 15 ice cream cones, but only 5 people are going to show up. So then what do you do when, in order to entice them to get your ice cream cones, you have to drop your price even lower than what it might cost you to buy the ice cream and the cone, then you're in a real spit of trouble because you can't unload your supply because the demand is far too low, and you can't turn a profit because they're like people out there don't have money or don't have the desire to buy your ice cream, and the reason they don't have the desire or the money is because their money is going towards other basic necessities, and like they also don't want to die from a deadly pandemic. It's not like rocket science here. I know I say it's not like rocket science an awful lot on this channel, but the issue is um so guys, I would encourage you, if you want to learn more about economics, you should check out Dr. Professor Wolf. Sorry, Dr. Richard Wolf. He's a professor of economics, and he specializes in Marxist economics. So he is very interesting to hear speak. He has a show, I believe, called Economic Update. You can find it on YouTube. It's really good. He's a very smart, gentle lad, and there are years of content going way back that you can find. Very educational stuff. Highly recommend it. Very good stuff. And for me, the issue is I haven't had a formal education into economics since I was in like advanced AP economics in high school. So it's going off of some old information, but I still remember basic supply and demand stuff. Um, the Doctor Professor check. Fuck. I feel like that's is there a character named Doctor Professor? I feel like there should be. I feel like that's something I would see on like an episode of Archer. Um. Anyway, let's see. So we'll dive into this. This is by James Surowiecki. All right. Um. This is a column that talks about businesses and the economy. Uh, on July 11th, the American economy hit a key milestone in its recovery from the coronavirus. The Magic Kingdom of Walt Disney World reopened. The world's most popular theme park had been shuttered since March 12th. March 16th. And the expectation was that Disney lovers from across the US, frustrated after months indoors, would flock to Orlando. In the weeks leading up to the reopening, Disney had more than enough reservations to fill the park to its new limited capacity, but as reopening day approached, the number of COVID-19 cases in Florida began to rise, and in response, people started doing something Disney visitors almost never do, canceling their reservations. In the 3 months that have followed, the customer traffic has stayed well below where Disney hoped it would be. The portion of visitors who are from out of state, who are the park's most lucrative customers, has dropped below 50%. In September, Disney reduced opening hours to all its parks, and in early October, it said it would be laying off 28,000 workers. Um, Disney hasn't been alone. Theme parks were allowed to open back up. It references Six Flags, which has been operating at 25 to 30% capacity. We've got also beyond that, like a lot of other theme parks that are just closing completely for the season. Um, and here and like this is a problem that's not limited to theme parks. You also have it extending to restaurants, movie theaters, airlines, gyms, and the wider economy. Consumer anxiety over the continued spread of the pandemic is holding back the recovery by making it impossible to get back to business as usual. And this is something that any most economists could have told you at the beginning of the pandemic. Economies don't fully recover from pandemics until the threat of the pandemic has passed. And the issue is that our response to the pandemic in the United States has prolonged the period of uncertainty in which people are afraid to go out and afraid of contracting the disease. So instead of being able to return as business to business as normal, we are now in this period of uncertainty where people are not willing to go out, not willing to spend money and consume like they used to, or are in positions where they are unable to because they have been laid off and there is no economic support for them. So we're just in this weird nebulous bubble. And the recovery that we've really been experiencing has been mostly a mirage that has been cast by the CARES Act. And the CARES Act basically sent a huge lifeline out to the United States. It was something that allowed people to get by on an individual level. It helped businesses pay the bills. And yes, there was some like misappropriation of funds to larger businesses that didn't necessarily need the money. But now we're getting into a really tight time where that money has run out, and that's why you've noticed that they've started talking about like another relief package, and that's because we're still not through the worst of the pandemic. We're still experiencing this demand shock brought on by the fact that like if you go out and you get the pandemic, you get the COVID-19, you're still have a 2.7% chance of dying, you know? Oh, excuse me. Um, so, uh, businesses literally could not supply goods and services because they were shut down. Um, yeah, so that was a problem when businesses were shut down, and that's why we needed, by the way, the economic package to enable us to shut down without losing a huge part of our economy permanently. Um, oh yeah, there's a three-way pissing contest over relief between the White House, McConnell, and Pelosi. The issue is, I think that both McConnell and Pelosi, neither of them want to pass COVID-19 relief, but for very different reasons. Trump previously had did not want to, and then realized that his statements caused like a 5% drop in the stock market, and quickly walked that back. And now he is very willing to pass something. The issue is that Nancy Pelosi has gone on TV and like basically made a really big deal about not that the Democrats are the party of helping people, and she's done a very piss poor job of clarifying that one of the big things that the Democrats are very keen on, in addition to getting more money than Republicans would like to extend, they want to make sure that the bill being offered does not give protections to businesses against being sued if their employees get sick with COVID-19. Because if those protections do go in, which is currently in, I believe, the relief bill proposed by the Republicans, both McConnell and Trump, if that goes through, that means that if your boss tells you go lick that doorknob clean and you don't, and then you get fired, you can't sue them because you tried to save your life. It's like how what's his face? I think it was like this might have been Kavanaugh. It's how Brett Kavanaugh ruled in favor of like the trucking company who was upset that a trucker had left his disabled vehicle in the middle of a snowstorm in order to go get help. Um, and like they ruled that, and Kavanaugh ruled that he was in the wrong. Stuff like that. And I might be misremembering the judge, but like kind of in that vein. Um, the lockdowns had like created supply shock. So there was way too much like not enough supply to go around. And then now we are in demand shock because people have learned about the pandemic, have lost loved ones, and are now much less likely to go out until the threat has passed. Um, what makes this demand shock exceptional is that the US still has 40 to 50,000 new COVID-19 cases and 600 to 700 deaths every day. Bear in mind, this was written last week. So this is before the numbers started climbing. Just today we have 81,000 new cases of COVID-19. And as a result, lots of Americans are still leery of doing normal, not particularly indulgent things like eating out, going to the gym, or going to the movies. A recent survey of by research film Data Essentials, for instance, found that 58% of those surveyed described themselves as uncomfortable with dining indoors, and 36% described themselves as very uncomfortable. Not surprisingly, then, no matter how creative restaurants get, traffic is still down sharply in most places, and 2.5 million restaurant workers who lost their jobs in April remain unemployed. Similarly, gyms that have been open in most states for months now. Gyms have been open in most states for months now. But a recent survey of 5,000 gym goers by Run Repeat found that 70% hadn't returned and 43% said they had no plans to go back. Half a dozen gym chains have filed for bankruptcy in recent months, including 24 Hour Fitness, the owner of New York Sports Club, and Gold's Gym, with many of them permanently shuttering a majority of their locations. Yeah, yeah. So literally, Archangel Takab, our country is doing 10,000 times worse than you when it comes to the pandemic. Oh, wait, this week? Oh, okay. Well, I think actually we are exponentially even worse than that because we are 10,000 times worse than than your entire week in just today. So, I don't know I don't know what that adds up to, but it's real bad. Fuck. Or take movie theaters. By September, theaters were open in 44 of 50 states, and Warner Bros. Decided to go ahead with its plans to release Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which has been one of the most highly anticipated films of the year even before the pandemic hit. Even though theaters in New York City and Los Angeles remain closed, Tenet opened on almost 3,000 screens across the country. But even as Tenet did big box office numbers overseas in countries where the virus has been contained, see, this is the issue. Um, when I advocate for us closing down our economy and like closing down nationwide, yeah, that's going to come with a big price tag attached to it to make sure like people can remain operational and businesses don't go under. All of that is true. However, the benefit is that going forward after such a shutdown, um, you can do things like go out and see a movie. You can do things like, uh, you know, deal with these problems because most of the people who have been infected with the virus then are able to go get treatment or quarantine themselves or get tested, etc. And they aren't spreading it around. Um, and oh, so you've had 18 over the past week? 18 cases over the past week? I don't know how many cases we've had over the past week because we have so many. It's calculated by the day here. um, it made just 9.4 million on its opening weekend despite facing essentially no competition. The hope had been that Tenet would prove people were ready to go back to the movies. Instead, it proved most weren't. Hollywood studios concluded there was no point in trying to release big films for the rest of the year and pulled their tentpole films from the fall schedule. Now, I need to remind you that most conservatives are going to attribute Hollywood not releasing films or theaters closing up to statewide shutdowns. However, that's not the case. The issue is not the statewide shutdowns, which have largely lifted. The issue is now that people are not comfortable and do not feel safe enough to go to movie theaters, not en masse. And the conservatives that live in a bubble who do think that people should feel safe enough, they don't understand the gravity of the situation they're in because they refuse to accept that they could be the 2% who died to this virus. Their loved ones could be the 2% who died to this virus. Like they're willing to just be like, fuck it. People should just be comfortable with 8 million Americans dying. We've seen that from multiple conservatives in this chat so far. Oh yeah, Jose of Scranton. Like we could do a much better lockdown where basically just grocery stores and emergency services are open, and I think that that would be very much justified given the gravity of what has been happening. Um, and we need to close down for probably, I would say, about a month to make sure that people who have been infected so far uh, are able to get tested once they start exhibiting like symptoms, are able to go to the hospital if it gets serious, and then when the lockdown lifts, we can go about our normal business. And thanks to the combination of consumer anxiety and the lack of new content, Cineworld, owner of Regal Cinemas, has shut down 536 of its theaters in the US, while AMC, the largest theater chain, says it could run out of cash by the end of the year. This shouldn't be a revelation. In fact, myriad studies have now shown that in the early days of the pandemic, people began voluntarily socially distancing and avoiding places they perceived as risky even before the lockdowns were put in place. If you go farther back in history, during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, businesses stayed open in most cities, yet economic activity still fell sharply, and contemporary accounts suggest the economy only started to rebound when people became less afraid of catching the Spanish flu. So, yeah, the point is that lifting stay at home orders and reopening restaurants isn't enough. Until consumers feel safe, they're going to stay away. So that's the issue. That's part of the issue. And that's like conservatives just aren't able to wrap their heads around the fact that like we need to close down so that people feel safe enough in order to resume consuming. And since we have a consumption based economy, along with services, we need to be able to have the confidence that when we go out, we're not going to die. And currently, we don't have that. And you'll get conservatives who are like, oh, but like the comorbidities, like people are dying, not dying from coronavirus, they're dying because they have diabetes or whatever. But the issue is that like 70, like the majority of the country has a pre-existing condition that would make them more vulnerable to COVID-19. Many of them just don't know it. And if they're over the age of 50, there's a 75% chance that they have like a pre-existing condition that would negatively in fact like impact them getting COVID-19. And that number just keeps going up. Like the older you get. So what do you really want to sacrifice 75% of the people who are over 50? Is that what you really want to do? As a country, or would you rather just like take a brief economic hit and then resume our activity as normal? In the wake of spring lockdowns, a popular narrative emerged that the only thing holding back the US economy were busybody government officials who insisted on keeping stuff shut down. And to be sure, government imposed restrictions are still playing a role in holding back the economy, particularly in states like California, which has yet to allow Disneyland or movie theaters to open. But what the experience of restaurant and gyms and theme parks is telling us uh, is that the problem now isn't lockdowns. It's something more basic, justifiable fear. And that's the issue, really, when you get down to it. We've lost over 200,000 people to this pandemic. Let's just take a look real quick. U.S. COVID deaths. Yeah, we're currently sitting at 223,000 people. 828 people died today. Like, every single day, we are losing hundreds of people to this pandemic that was largely preventable at the beginning. And it's still preventable now if we had the ability to shut down. But we don't shut down on a national level, and it keeps going.